man says it's the end of time. Mississippi River is a-going dry.
For more than 7 decades, the life of Hank Williams Jr. has been a turbulent journey through heartbreak and tragedy. From the devastating loss of his iconic father when he was just a toddler, to surviving a harrowing, near-fatal fall off of a cliff, his story is one of extraordinary survival and relentless tragedy. But Hank Jr.'s path didn't stop at pain. It became a story of transformation, where he overcame the weight of his father's towering legacy and forged his own identity in country music. Along the way, he endured family losses, personal battles, and controversies that tested his spirit at every turn. This is the story of Hank Williams Jr., a man who faced unimaginable hardships, yet rose to carve out a legacy that is as enduring as it is inspiring. So what really happened to Hank Williams Jr.? In the final days of 1952, Hank Sr. was battling his own demons. His health was failing, and his body had become a fragile vessel for the weight of his lifestyle. On a cold December night, he made a chilling statement to his wife. "I think I see God coming down the road." It was a cryptic and eerie premonition, one that would prove heartbreakingly true. Shortly after, Hank embarked on what would unknowingly be his final journey. A snowstorm disrupted his travel plans, forcing him onto a treacherous road trip. With a college student acting as his driver, they pressed on, navigating bad weather and long hours. Hank, weakened by a dangerous mix of alcohol, prescription drugs, and pain, fell silent during the trip. When his driver finally stopped for gas, the grim reality set in. Hank Williams Sr. was gone. Rigor mortis had already claimed his body, marking the end of a legend at just 29 years old. The news of his death sent shockwaves across the nation. Fans mourned the loss of the man who had redefined country music, but no one felt the impact more deeply than his family. For Audrey Williams, his widow, and Hank Williams Jr., his young son, the world would never be the same. At just 3 years old, Hank Jr. was thrust into an unimaginable position. While most children his age were learning to navigate the simplicities of life, young Hank was suddenly burdened with the expectations of an entire industry. To the world, he wasn't just a boy. He was the heir to his father's throne, the continuation of a legacy that had captivated millions. From that moment on, Hank Jr.'s life was no longer his own. The world watched as this child grew, measuring him constantly against the towering shadow of his father. The music industry saw him as a living embodiment of Hank Sr.'s greatness, and they made it their mission to mold him into a replica of the man he barely remembered. It wasn't just a tribute, it was an expectation, one that would define his life for years to come. As he grew older, the weight of this legacy only intensified. By the time he was old enough to understand, Hank Jr. realized that his identity had been stripped away before he even had a chance to find it. He wasn't allowed to be just a boy. Instead, he was groomed to sing his father's songs, to sound like him, to move like him, and to embody the spirit of a man he never truly knew. The pressure was suffocating, and the loss of personal freedom left deep emotional scars. Even as the world celebrated his resemblance to Hank Sr., young Hank struggled to find his own place. The tragedy of his father's death wasn't just a personal loss. It became the defining moment of his existence. A father's legacy became a son's burden, shaping a life that would be marked by struggle, defiance, and ultimately, a hard-earned triumph. Hank Williams Jr. was born into a legacy that most could only dream of, but for him it was more of a double-edged sword. Known by the nickname Bossfus, given to him by his father after a ventriloquist dummy, Hank Jr.'s childhood was far from ordinary. From the moment he could walk, he was surrounded by the sounds of guitars and the expectations of greatness. But for a child who barely knew his father, living in his shadow was no simple task. From a young age, the world expected him to be a carbon copy of Hank Williams Sr., and his grooming to fill those shoes began almost immediately. Industry executives, fans, and even his own family shaped him into a reflection of the man who had become a country music legend. They taught him to mimic his father's voice, his stage presence, even his mannerisms, ensuring that every performance felt like a resurrection of Hank Sr. instead of an introduction to Hank Jr. It wasn't just about preserving a legacy. It was about creating an illusion. For Hank Jr., this meant there was no room to discover who he was on his own terms. At just 8 years old, Hank Jr. took the stage at the Grand Ole Opry, performing his father's songs to a crowd that seemed eager to see the elder Hank come back to life. With his striking resemblance and the hauntingly similar tone of his voice, he dazzled the audience. But behind the applause and admiration was a boy who had no say in the life being built for him. By the time he was a teenager, his career was already well underway, not as Hank Jr., but as a continuation of his father's legacy. In 1964, he recorded his first album, Hank Williams Jr. Sings the Songs of Hank Williams Sr. It was a collection of his father's hits, and while it earned him critical acclaim, it also set the tone for what others expected of him. Over the next few years, he would release multiple albums, all dedicated to preserving his father's work. And while they were commercially successful, they left little room for his own creative expression. To the world, he was simply an extension of his father, a vessel to carry on Hank Sr.'s music, not an artist in his own right. As the accolades poured in, so did the pressure. Hank Jr. struggled to reconcile his own desires with the demands of those around him. Every attempt he made to branch out, to experiment with a sound that was uniquely his, was met with heavy criticism. Industry insiders dismissed his efforts, reminding him that his role was to maintain the legacy, not rewrite it. Fans who had come to expect a mirror image of Hank Sr. were quick to reject any deviation. This constant pressure took a toll. While the world applauded his ability to channel his father, Hank Jr. felt increasingly lost. He was living someone else's life, and the weight of it was suffocating. His struggles with identity were magnified by the fact that he couldn't escape the comparisons. Every note he sang, every step he took, was judged against a man who had been immortalized as a legend. It didn't matter that he was still a teenager trying to navigate his own path. To the industry, he wasn't Hank Jr. He was simply a placeholder for Hank Sr. As he grew older, the criticism became more personal. Anytime he attempted to break free from his father's image, the backlash was swift and unforgiving. The industry's refusal to let him grow into his own person made it clear. His value was tied to how closely he could replicate his father, not to his own talent or creativity. For a young man trying to find his footing, it was a devastating realization. Hank Jr.'s early career, though filled with successes on paper, was marked by a deep personal struggle. The more he performed, the more he felt like a prisoner to the expectations that had been placed on him since childhood. He wasn't allowed to fail, to explore, or to even be himself. Instead, he was trapped in a cycle of recreating the past, living a life that wasn't his own. And while the world may have cheered for Bosphus, the boy behind the name was slowly losing himself in the process. By the time Hank Williams Jr. turned 25, the weight of living in his father's shadow had become unbearable. Years of being molded into a replica of his legendary father had stripped him of his identity, leaving him feeling like a stranger in his own life. The relentless comparisons, the pressure to uphold a legacy he never asked for, and the inability to find his own voice all came crashing down. What the world saw as a thriving career was, in reality, a life spiraling out of control. Behind the scenes, Hank Jr. was battling intense feelings of inadequacy, isolation, and hopelessness. It was during this time that he reached his breaking point. In a moment of despair, Hank Jr. attempted to end his life. The details remain private, but the scars it left were both physical and emotional. It was a cry for freedom, a desperate attempt to escape the expectations that had chained him for years. When he awoke in the hospital, the severity of his situation became clear, and the words of his doctor would haunt him. "You've been groomed to live like your father in every possible way. The only difference is, he died at 29. If you don't change something, you won't make it past 26. Those words hit Hank Jr. like a bolt of lightning. He had spent his entire life being someone else, and if he didn't reclaim control, he feared he would share his father's fate. For the first time, he truly understood the danger of continuing down the same path. It wasn't just his career or his identity at stake. It was his life. That moment marked a turning point, sparking a resolve deep within him to rewrite his story. Determined to break free from the shadow of Hank Sr., Hank Jr. made a bold decision. He packed his things and moved to Alabama, distancing himself from the industry and the pressures that had defined his existence. In this new chapter, he sought solitude, reflection, and clarity. Away from the constant comparisons and demands, he found the space to discover who he was and what he wanted to create. It was in Alabama that Hank Jr. began experimenting with a sound that was entirely his own. Gone were the days of trying to mimic his father's mournful ballads. Instead, he leaned into a more raw, edgy style, a fusion of southern rock and country that reflected his own personality and experiences. This wasn't just a musical shift, it was a declaration of independence. For the first time, Hank Jr. felt the freedom to express himself as an artist, not just as his father's son. This decision to embrace his individuality would prove to be the most important of his life. The music he created during this time not only revitalized his career, but also saved his life. It gave him a purpose, a voice, and a renewed sense of self. While the scars from his attempt at ending it all never fully disappeared, they served as a reminder of how far he had come. Hank Jr. had taken his darkest moment and turned it into the foundation of a new beginning. It was no longer about living up to a legacy. It was about creating his own. In 1975, Hank Williams Jr. faced one of the most harrowing moments of his life, a near-fatal accident that would forever alter the course of his journey. At the time, Hank had begun carving out a new path for himself, exploring a sound that was uniquely his own. But just as he was finding his footing, tragedy struck in the most unexpected way. While climbing Mount Ajax in Montana with a friend, Hank attempted to cross a snowfield at the mountain's peak. The snow beneath him gave way, and in an instant, he plummeted over 500 feet down the rugged mountainside. The fall was catastrophic, leaving his skull fractured in multiple places and his body battered by the unforgiving terrain. His friend, Dick Willie, immediately called for help, and a rescue team quickly airlifted Hank to the Missoula Community Hospital. For the next 7 hours, a team of skilled surgeons worked tirelessly to save his life. The injuries were devastating. His face was shattered, his skull fractured, and his condition critical. The road to recovery was long and grueling. Over the next 2 years, Hank underwent multiple surgeries, including extensive reconstructive procedures involving plates, skin grafts, and other complex treatments. The physical pain was overwhelming, but the emotional toll was equally profound. Not only was he fighting to heal, but he was also grappling with the reality that his life would never be the same. During this dark period, Hank found solace in the unwavering support of two of the most influential figures in his life, June Carter Cash and her husband, Johnny Cash. The couple stood by him through every step of his recovery, offering encouragement and hope when he needed it most. June, in particular, became a source of spiritual strength, often reminding him that his survival was nothing short of a miracle. Her faith and belief in him helped fuel his determination to overcome the odds. As Hank's physical wounds began to heal, he faced another challenge: how to rebuild his life and his image. The accident had left him with permanent scars, both visible and hidden. To cope with the changes to his appearance, Hank adopted what would become his signature look: a full beard, dark sunglasses, and a cowboy hat. What began as a way to cover his scars quickly became an iconic style that symbolized his resilience and transformation. This new persona was more than just a physical change. It was a declaration of survival and a testament to his ability to rise above adversity. But the road back to music was not an easy one. Hank had to relearn how to walk, talk, and even sing. The trauma had taken a toll on his body and his confidence, and it took years of dedication and perseverance to regain his strength. Through it all, Hank never gave up. The accident that could have ended his life became a turning point, a moment of rebirth that fueled his resolve to continue making music on his own terms. Hank Williams Jr. emerged from this tragedy stronger and more determined than ever. The man who had once been trapped in his father's shadow was now forging a legacy of his own, one built on resilience, authenticity, and an unyielding spirit. His scars became a part of his story, a visible reminder of his survival and his ability to rise after every fall. With the support of those who believed in him and his own unrelenting will, Hank turned his greatest tragedy into one of his most profound triumphs. Hank Williams Jr.'s career took a transformative turn with the release of Hank Williams Jr. and Friends in 1975. This album marked a bold departure from his past, showcasing a sound that was unmistakably his own. Blending country with southern rock and blues, Hank created a style that broke free from the shadow of his father's legacy. The album's raw energy and emotional depth resonated with fans, signaling the arrival of a new Hank Williams Jr., not just the son of a legend, but an artist with a powerful voice and identity all his own. It was a declaration of independence, one that set the stage for a career unlike anything country music had seen before. The 1980s proved to be Hank's golden era, a time when his reinvention fully blossomed into an unparalleled wave of success. During this decade, Hank released an astounding string of chart-topping albums and singles that solidified his place as one of country music's most iconic figures. Songs like Family Tradition and Whiskey Bent and Hellbound became anthems for a generation, capturing a rebellious, hard-edged spirit that resonated far beyond traditional country audiences. His music wasn't just a reflection of his life, it was a celebration of it, filled with themes of resilience, freedom, and unapologetic individuality. One of Hank's most memorable achievements came in 1989, with his emotional collaboration with his late father on the song There's a Tear in My Beer. Using advanced electronic merging technology, Hank Jr. was able to record a duet with his father's original vocals, creating a hauntingly beautiful piece that connected past and present in a way no one had ever imagined. The accompanying music video, which featured footage of Hank Sr. interwoven with new clips of Hank Jr., brought the song to life, earning critical acclaim and touching the hearts of millions. It won several prestigious awards, including a Grammy for Best Country Vocal Collaboration, and remains a defining moment in Hank Jr.'s career. As Hank's music reached new heights, so did his influence on popular culture. His rowdy, larger-than-life persona and energetic performances helped him break into mainstream entertainment, making him a household name. In 1984, he recorded All My Rowdy Friends Are Coming Over Tonight, which would later become the iconic theme for Monday Night Football. This collaboration brought his music to a new audience, blending the worlds of sports and country music in a way that was both innovative and unforgettable. The theme earned him multiple Emmy Awards and cemented his place as a cultural icon. Hank's ability to fuse traditional country roots with rock and roll swagger allowed him to transcend genre boundaries, reaching fans across a wide spectrum. His influence extended far beyond the charts, shaping the evolution of country music and inspiring countless artists who followed in his footsteps. By the end of the 1980s, Hank Williams Jr. had achieved what few artists could claim. He had built a legacy entirely his own, rooted in authenticity and a refusal to conform. This era of reinvention and success was not just about accolades and hit records. It was about a man reclaiming his identity and using his music to tell his story. Hank Williams Jr. had emerged from the shadows of his past to become a force of nature in his own right. and his impact on the world of music and culture continues to be felt to this day. Despite his success, heartbreak seemed to follow him at every turn, beginning with the loss of his mother, Audrey Williams. Though their relationship was complicated, her death in 1975 was a profound blow. Audrey had played a pivotal role in his early career, guiding him while also adding to the pressures that weighed heavily on him. Losing her at a time when he was still recovering from his near-fatal accident only deepened the emotional scars he carried. Years later, in 2020, tragedy struck Hank's family again when his daughter, Catherine Williams Dunning, lost her life in a devastating car accident. At just 27 years old, Catherine's SUV flipped while towing a boat, ending her life instantly and leaving her husband, Tyler Dunning, critically injured. The loss was a staggering blow to the entire Williams family, one that rippled through their lives and brought waves of grief from fans around the world. Catherine's passing was a reminder of how fleeting life can be and underscored the fragility that Hank had faced so many times before. Only 2 years later, in 2022, Hank suffered another unthinkable loss when his wife, Mary Jane Thomas, died unexpectedly after a cosmetic surgery procedure went tragically wrong. The routine operation, which initially seemed successful, ended in heartbreak when complications arose during recovery. Mary Jane, who had been by Hank's side for decades, was a pillar of strength and love in his life. Her death left him grappling with yet another profound void, one that even time might struggle to heal. But personal tragedies weren't the only challenges Hank faced. In 2006, he found himself at the center of a legal storm when allegations of assault were brought against him. A waitress at the Peabody Hotel in Memphis accused him of inappropriate behavior, claiming he had lifted her off the ground in a chokehold after an encounter turned hostile. The accusations sparked a media frenzy, putting Hank's name in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. While the charges were eventually dropped due to insufficient evidence, the incident left a mark on his public image, adding yet another layer of controversy to his already complex legacy. Hank's polarizing nature extended beyond personal scandals into the political arena. In 2011, he made headlines again, this time for his outspoken and controversial remarks about President Barack Obama. During an appearance on Fox News, Hank compared Obama in an attempt to express his disdain for a bipartisan golf game involving the President and House Speaker, John Boehner. The statement ignited widespread outrage, leading ESPN to drop his Monday Night Football theme after more than 2 decades of partnership. Though Hank later clarified that his comments were meant to be extreme to make a point, the fallout was swift and severe. He responded in true Hank Williams Jr. fashion by recording a defiant song titled "Keep the Change," which criticized both ESPN and the political climate that he felt silenced him. Through these trials, Hank Williams Jr. has remained a figure of resilience, defiance, and complexity. The tragedies and scandals that have surrounded him are as much a part of his story as his successes, painting a portrait of a man who has lived a life filled with both soaring highs and devastating lows. Despite it all, Hank continues to push forward, his legacy a testament to the strength it takes to survive and thrive in the face of relentless adversity. In 2021, after decades of chart-topping hits and an undeniable impact on country music, Hank Williams Jr. was finally inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. For many, the honor felt long overdue. Despite his groundbreaking contributions to the genre, Hank had been overlooked for years, even as his influence shaped the sound of modern country music. When he stepped on stage to accept the recognition, his speech was short but powerful. With a tone both reflective and pointed, he acknowledged the delayed honor, saying, "A lot of people to thank, and I know who they are. They know who they are." It was a moment of vindication for a man who had spent a lifetime carving out his own identity in the shadow of his father's towering legacy. Hank's influence doesn't end with his own music. It extends to the next generations of the Williams family. His children and grandchildren have continued to carry the family's musical torch. Hank Williams III has carved his path in the music world with his unique blend of punk and country, while Sam Williams has emerged as a rising star with a more modern sound. Even Hank's grandson, Coleman Williams, performs under the name Hank Williams IV, ensuring that the legacy of the Williams family continues to evolve with each new voice. In 2022, Hank released his 54th studio album, Rich White Honky Blues, a raw and soulful dive into his roots. Recorded entirely in one take, the album was a testament to his enduring creativity and authenticity. It showcased his ability to stay true to himself while exploring new artistic territory. Even after decades in the industry, Hank Williams Jr. proved that his passion for music remained as strong as ever, and his willingness to push boundaries had not faded. Hank's story is one of resilience, reinvention, and an unyielding commitment to his craft. From his long-awaited Hall of Fame induction to his continued influence on country music, his legacy stands as a testament to the power of perseverance and the enduring spirit of a man who refused to be defined by anyone but himself. Hank Williams Jr. is far more than a musician. He's a testament to the power of resilience and reinvention. His journey through immense personal tragedy, relentless pressure, and hard-fought transformation has made him an enduring figure in the world of country music and beyond. From the shadow of his father's legendary legacy to his own monumental successes, Hank has shown what it means to persevere, to stand tall in the face of adversity, and to carve out a path uniquely his own. His music continues to strike a chord across generations, resonating with fans who find inspiration in his authenticity and bold spirit. Hank's songs tell stories of survival, rebellion, and celebration. Stories that echo not only his own life, but the lives of millions who listen to his work. His ability to connect with people through his music has cemented his place as an icon whose influence will stand the test of time. Now, we want to hear from you. What's your favorite Hank Williams Jr. song or memory? Share it in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more in-depth explorations of the lives and legacies of iconic musicians. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the life of Hank Williams Jr., a story of heartbreak, triumph, and the unbreakable spirit of a legend.